Hey, everybody. As you do your life the way you think it should be done, God has another plan, and it doesn't look anything like yours. If God has ever given you a vision or called you to step out in faith, today's episode is for you. We have a very special guest with us who will be sharing how she came to recognize and obey God's plan and how he has helped her to move forward by faith and how he helps and sustains her in the ministry he's called her to do. Join us on Biblical Guidance for Living. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Biblical Guidance for Living, where we promote a lifestyle of faith in Jesus through God's Word. We have a very special guest with us today, Sandra Marks of Hearts and Hands Food Pantry out of Huntersville, North Carolina. Sandra loves the Lord and is going to bless us by sharing her testimony on how God was able to use her to start a food pantry ministry for those in need. Many of us are being called by God today. You may be feeling the Holy Spirit urging you to step out in faith and trust God, but you're not knowing what to do or how to do it. Oftentimes, what we need is courage and some encouragement. Sandra will share how her plan changed and became God's plan for her, and now her words are going to encourage you and us. So welcome, Sandra.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really glad to be here with you all and this opportunity to share with you.
Great. We are so glad you're here. We're anxious to hear from you, how God worked through you in your situation. So tell us a little bit about how this all started.
Well, I thought that the plan for my life was pretty much set. I had pretty much a good life, thought I was blessed in my career as a fashion designer, blessed in my family. Things were really good. I had the house, the husband, the kids, the job, everything according to the world's standard except the dog. But you know, our good is not God's good. He always wants more of us. Things can change really quickly sometimes, and we seem to be stripped of our comfortable place to a place where it's just you and Jesus. And that's exactly what happened to me. I call it the Job moment. You know, the story of Job in the Bible where he was stripped of everything that he had, and he had to affirm his faith and his trust in God. And that's what I did during that time period. I went through a period of loss of my business, loss of my marriage, home, and an illness, all in the space of 3 years. During that time when I was ill, I thought I wouldn't make it and committed to make sure that my daughters would know Jesus Christ as their personal Lord and Savior. And they were teenagers, and my oldest daughter was about 20 at that time. When I fully surrendered and accepted that apart from God, I could do nothing, then he started to restore me because, as we know, God is a God of restoration. As I began by faith to allow the Spirit to lead me, God began to change the direction of my life. During that time, God relocated me, reestablished my career as a fashion designer, and planted me in a new place in North Carolina.
So, wow, that's a lot. And I'm sure a lot of us can relate to that we've had those same experiences. But sometimes we may stay where we are and not look to God to turn us and move us in the direction. So tell us a little bit about how were you led to even start Food Pantry? Whose idea was that?
Well, I'm going to quote a verse from Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 2 and 3. Write the vision and make it plain. That's the first thing. And God gives us visions and he speaks to us. In January 2017, while watching a show with my daughter, this is right after Christmas, we were watching a show called Extreme Couponing. I'd never seen the show before. And as we watched how people would go into a grocery store and buy hundreds of dollars worth of food with just coupons and basically spent no money. And together we looked at each other and we said to one another, we can do that. You know, we can definitely do that. And then at the same moment, we both had the idea to start a food pantry at our church. So what we did after that is we just jumped into action. We started to write a plan. We prepared a presentation for our pastor. We knew that we had to put this into words. And that's what God tells us to do. Writing the plan or the vision is the first step of obeying what God has given us to do. And we have to act quickly. If we don't act quickly, then we start to think about all sorts of things. We start to look at our feelings. We start to say, well, did he really say that to me? Or am I just fooling myself? No, he didn't tell me to do that. And that's why it's so important that we just act immediately. Anyway, the couponing lasted about a month, but Hearts and Hands Food Pantry was started. This was the farthest thing from my mind at that time. I really would never have thought and dreamed, my wildest dream, that I'd be starting a food pantry. I'm a fashion designer by trade. I have all kinds of artistic abilities, and to start a food pantry just kind of blew me away. Anyway, we know also too that whom God calls, he also equips.
Yes.
So we started out in a room that was 12 feet by 8 feet in our church. Very small. And we said, we'll just do it. He's called us to do this, whatever, it's free, we'll take it. Okay, so we started that way. And we knew also that we wanted to provide more to people than just canned goods, non-perishables. We wanted to provide baby items. We wanted to provide other sources, personal hygiene items, things that people forget and neglect when they have food insecurity. So we just kept going. We always knew that our purpose was to minister to the community outside the walls of the church. Mm-hmm. And so in November of 2018, God moved us from the church location to a much larger facility with a parking lot, and he also granted our nonprofit status. It was always in our spirit that we were being prepared for something that was coming. We didn't know what it was, but we would keep reminding ourselves something's coming. We don't know what. That was the time when there was the hurricane in Puerto Rico. And we said, well, if we had the food pantry, we could collect all kinds of things and send it to Puerto Rico. But that wasn't it. We had no clue what was coming. So we spent the better half of 2019 preparing and establishing ourselves in the community as an independent pantry. And then February 2020, COVID hit, COVID-19 pandemic. And we watched as one after another businesses closed in Charlotte, organizations shut down, the other food pantries closed. We got a call from the soup kitchen. What are you guys going to do? Are you going to stay open? We're closing. My daughter and I looked at each other and we pretty much said, no, this is it. This is what God has called us to do. So we stayed open. My daughter used her skills to change our model from, where people would come inside and we would sit and talk with them and be able to minister to them. We changed it into an Instacart model where people would go to our website, they would fill out an application, they can select the items they needed, and then they would come and pick it up for contactless curbside pickup. We also started a delivery service at that time for people who were shut in, quarantined, just weren't able to come out at that time. People were afraid. So we served approximately 1,500 families during that period. And currently we're serving 300 families per month throughout the Charlotte area.
That is fantastic. Sitting here listening to you, the word obedient came to mind, because just by you being obedient to God's call, you were positioned to service so many people. I mean, who would have ever thought that a pandemic would have, crossed our paths, and God positioned you. And if you weren't obedient, if one of those feelings got in the way and stopped you from doing what he called you to do, so many people, there would have been a missed opportunity. Let's just say that, a missed opportunity. And so this follows up with the question I have for you. When we hear God calling, or when we hear or we think God's calling, sometimes moving in what he's calling us, we can be afraid. We can have feelings that get in the way. So, did you have any fear? And if you did, how did you overcome that fear?
Well, I'm naturally kind of introverted in a way. And I did have fear because it was something out of my comfort zone. But, during my walk, during that period of restoration, I had grown so close to God and was always constantly listening for his voice. And I learned to trust him. And I also learned and believe with all my heart that God can do all things. Everything is possible with him. And if you have that mindset, which we have to train ourselves to believe that he is a big God. So
yes,
anything he can do, there's nothing he can't do. So with that in mind, that's how we started on. Many of us, we have dreams and we say that God told us to do something, but we never fulfill them because of fear, and we give up. What happens when we're not obedient? As you were saying, when God calls us to do something, we miss the call, and he has to find someone else to replace us. He put somebody else in our space, and it may be a month, 2 months, a year, and we realize somebody's doing exactly what he told us to do, and we're left sitting, feeling really, in our spirit, we're like grieved because we didn't do what God told us to do. So 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7 says, "For God did not give us a spirit of timidity or cowardice or fear, but he has given us a spirit of power and of love and of a sound judgment and personal discipline, abilities that can result in a calm, well-balanced mind and self-control."
Amen. Amen. Well, I have a question for you. And first of all, let me tell you that coupon thing, my daughter and I started that too, but it didn't last long. So you're not by yourself. Okay. But I love it because I have 2 daughters. So whenever you say anything about daughters and mothers working together, and I realized that you talked about how you and your daughter got started, and even during COVID, by your daughter being very innovative in other ways so you guys would not close. So I'm just curious, did you enlist others from the start? And how did you enlist others that could help you with this vision that God had given you?
We did enlist, actually it was 2 people because we needed to have a board. So we needed two other like-minded people who saw into our vision to join our board. Other than that, when God gives you a vision, that vision is for you. It's not for everyone. And we have to be careful who we share that vision with. And I know that even when we were at the church, we kind of struggled sometimes with people wanting to kind of control what we were doing, tell us what to do. And outside of that, sometimes you want to do something, God has put this in your heart, and you tell someone and they say, "Oh yeah, we're right with you." But sometimes they're really not. They're actually sometimes hoping you'll fail, or they want to just take over what you're doing. So we really have to be careful with that and who we enlist for aid,
Amen. That is what you're saying is so true and so powerful. Like minds. As Christians, we know that we're supposed to be with like-minded people. And so that's key that when you are sharing. But what you said was so interesting because you were discerning, that you knew that God had a plan for you, and those who were not with you, you discerned that, hey, you're not for me. So, I'm just excited to be a part of this interview and being blessed by your words of wisdom and how, God is using you and you didn't let anything stop you. But I could go on and on, Sandra, but I'm going to let somebody else ask a question.
Okay. Wow. All I can say is wow. In terms of what God showed you, and just as importantly, your obedience to what he showed you to do. And, when you started talking at the very beginning, so we don't just get to a place that God sends us to. There is a process, and we go through some valley moments. And for some people, that can just kill the whole dream. They just say, well, I've got what's going on. God isn't speaking to me about this because I'm trying to handle what I'm dealing with now. But I look at the fact that, and I'm sure you can clearly see that everything you went through, you say you had a period of loss of your business, your marriage, your home, and an illness in the space of 3 years. And I know we can all attest that in the midst of whatever it is God allows us to go through, it is always going to draw us closer to him, and good will come out of it. Mm-hmm. God will use all of how we depend and just put everything on the line for him, so that when this opportunity comes, you said, okay, I know God in all these other ways he's brought me through. Why would he fail me now? So you just stepped in it. because you knew him. I guess is what I'm trying to say. You knew him for yourself. And that's just so important. So I'm thinking if anybody listening who are going through a number of just personal issues, and then this opportunity God places in your lap, just look at it the way Sandra did, that he's equipped me for this. Because he's brought me through those other things. And she stepped in it, you stepped in it and walked in it with confidence. So just what else, just putting it all together, how was that walk with you up until right now, what God has allowed you to do?
Well, the walk is everything, because without the experiences, without those losses, the things that he's brought you through, I always say in order for him to work through us, we have to be empty.
True.
We have to be empty. We can't have the pride. So he's got to get us to a place in our lives where all we see is him. And we are learning to walk with him, because like I said, I had everything for what I thought was everything at one point in my life, and then he took it all away. And I used to say, well, I never said, why did he do this to me? I only knew at that point, like I said, when I was going through the illness, that I had to commit. It was either death or life, basically. And that's where I was. So in that committing to have life, now I have to do it his way. Now I have to walk with him. And I saw his hand preparing me, when I look back on everything before we started the pantry. He had to get my spirit. He had to get my personality. He had to get everything in the right frame in order for him to use me in the way that he wanted to, because I would have gone kicking and screaming and saying, no, this is not what I want to do, but we learn to trust him through those experiences that he takes us. And as we see his hand in our lives, and not just his hand, but that relationship with him, because you're consulting with him every step of the way. Because like I said, when COVID hit and we were left by ourselves and we looked around and everything was closed, there's nobody to call up and say, well, can you help me do this? Or what should we do? He had to provide it all, and when the people started coming, that's when you're left with, okay, God, now what do you want me to do? And he said, talk to them. He said, tell them about me. Because these people are scared, they're frightened, they're crying, they've never been in a situation like this, but you've been through something. You've experienced that already. So you're coming from a whole different point. You're not in the same position as them. You can now show them how he brought you through. And that this is all, he's in this. Whatever it is that COVID is at this time, he's there, So that was that's what I'd say as far as what your question is.
Wonderful.
Wow. That's very powerful.
Yes,
I want to follow up with another question too, because a lot of our viewers are probably saying to themselves, well, God has given me a dream to maybe open a business or to open a clinic or to start teaching people something or, whatever it is he's calling them to. And they look at their situation, their finances and their resources, and they say, I don't have any. How is that even possible? So that's not really realistic because I don't have what it takes to start it. And they let it go. So since you started from nothing, you had nothing, you didn't know anything about food pantry or anything else. How did you get the resources you needed to grow and to develop in the way God wanted you to?
Well, it was kind of twofold. Number one, God is the provider. He's our provision. And that's how you have to go, especially if he's giving you something to do. You have to look for him to give you what you need every step of the way. So at the same time, like I said, he used that restoration period to build me up in certain parts of my finances, so that when we actually started and we moved into that new facility, we had to pay rent. At the church, there was no rent, there was no money. Everybody was, let's do a food drive. People would bring stuff. Now we're in the community. We're on our own. You have to pay rent. And he made it possible for me to be able to pay that rent for a few months. But I knew that's not where he wanted us to be. He wanted to provide. So we used to wait for him. We would pray. Sometimes we would have the service and we'd be out of so many things so quickly in that one service. And we're like, okay, scrambling. What do we do now? And we would pray. We'd talk about it. We'd pray. Next thing, there would be a knock at the door. Someone would be dropping off donations. I'm telling you, he sent people from all over. He sent the media to come and talk to us when people started hearing what we were doing. And that led to more people coming and donating, more people donating their time and their efforts and whatnot. He knows what you need. He knows what has to happen in order for his thing, I say his thing, not our thing, to grow. He knows exactly what is going to come, and he sends them to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a lesson that's sometimes hard for people to realize. God is a provider. And if we ask him, he will provide. We just have to trust that he's going to provide it in his way. Because a lot of times when we pray and ask, don't we already have an idea of how it's coming? Right. Mary Sue down the street's going to come over here and bring me, the money or the food or whatever. It's not going to be Mary Sue. And it may not be anybody even in the same area, as you pointed out. He works it out and he uses everything that's around us to help us to do what he's called us to do. And that's something we all have to trust. He will take care. This is his show, as you said, his thing. And his thing can never fail. So if we trust that, then we walk with him and allow him to do that.
I just want to add one thing. So John 15, verse 15 through 17 says, you didn't choose me. I chose you. I appointed you to go and produce lasting fruit so that the Father will give you whatever you ask for using my name. So he chose us for this. This wasn't my idea. So he's got to do everything. He's got to provide everything. He's got to show us, and that's the mindset, that we have. And because that's all I keep saying, he's going to do it,
Yeah. That is so true. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'll jump in if that's okay. Sure. So, as we talk about how God got you ready for this from what you've experienced and that you knew him, you came to know him. I would like to know, what did you learn about yourself and develop, or what developed as you were walking this walk and being obedient to God?
Well, I'd say the first thing that I learned was patience. I'm a very persistent person. I like things to happen quickly. And my daughters will tell you, I micromanage, get it done. Let's get this going. I had to learn patience. We had to learn to wait for God. I had to learn to just, not jump ahead of him, because when you jump ahead of him, that's when things don't go the way they're supposed to go. Right. There were days when we were first starting out that no one was coming. Yeah, we were there. We'd go. We'd prepare. We'd set up and everything. And okay, so where's all the people? Nobody's here. And you're sitting there. This can't be what he asked me to do. Just sitting here waiting in a chair. Nobody's coming. And there were days I used to feel kind of funny. This was when we were at the church, and people would walk by and they'd look in, and there's nobody there. So you feel kind of silly, Yeah. But, as we waited, then people started to come. He wants to also make sure that you are in the right frame of mind.
Exactly.
He wants to make sure that you're the real thing now. Right. You're not fooling with this, So on those days, and when we moved into the new facility, as people started to come and didn't come, and there were days, like I said, when they didn't show, we would just improvise. We would start doing a little Bible study. We'd talk about the vision. We'd still, plan for the goals, always with the anticipation that, this wait is for a purpose. Let's use it constructively. Let's not just sit here and throw up our arms and say, this is not what I signed up for, Right. So the more that we did that, the more the patience came. And then he started to show us, this is what I'm doing. I had to align certain things as you're waiting and put them in place. So that was one of the biggest things. And the second thing also too was that in that patience, he had to develop patience in me to deal with the people that we're going to serve. We don't all come with, we're the most compassionate. We're not Mother Teresa, we don't think like that, So he also had to develop that in me. And I used to pray, God, give me compassion. Give me, the sensitivity and the feeling towards people, decrease me that you might increase me, so that when they come, they don't see me. They don't see me, Sandra. They can feel the love of God when they come. And this is the difference that we wanted to make. I know that sometimes you can go to a pantry, they hand you a bag of food and that's it, send you on your way. But that's not what our purpose was to be, So he had to develop that sensitivity, that caring for people as well, because it's not natural for us sometimes. It's all about us,
Yeah.
And somebody's talking to you and pouring themselves out to you. This is what's happened to them. You have to listen.
Yeah.
You can't jump in and say, well, you need to do this. No, you have to listen. And that took a little time for me to, not jump in and just be quiet and just hear what they're saying, So that's two of the things he taught.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask one other question. So as you've walked through this ministry, what do you find to be the most rewarding thing? Clearly, you love what you do. Clearly, there's passion there and a strong, strong commitment. But what do you find to be the most rewarding aspect of that in your obedience to God?
I think it's seeing what God is doing. I think it's just as everything unfolds, every time we serve, there's good days, bad days. Sometimes things are a little bit hectic and crazy, whatever. But when you have a person that contacts you and says, after months or maybe weeks of coming, and they say, you've made such a difference in my life. And I'm saying, this is not me. This is God working through me to make that difference in their life. And it's just seeing how he can change people's lives. He can do things. He can, just by you being obedient and standing there in the gap for them, it's amazing to see what he can do.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to comment earlier on just what you said. Is what I love about God. A lot of things what I love about him too is that he is the greatest multitasker, because he can use situations to grow us individually, because we are his child. We are unique. No one else like us, but he knows what we need, who he desires us to grow into. And once we submit to it, then he uses us to grow and impact other people. It is powerful. Yeah. But it is about submission, letting him grow us and stretch us. And then we put ourselves out there and we listen to him and we serve and we live our lives and we interact with people that are going to make a difference for Christ. Yeah. And it all comes back to him. Everything we do. And that's how you walked it through. As I was listening to just a few moments, you just connected all the pieces, and it starts with him, pulls us in, helps other people, and it ends with him. And it's a circle. It really is. Thank you for letting him use you, Sandra.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Thank you.
This was a great conversation. I think for me, what I'm hoping is that the people who are listening, who have been called by God, who have a vision, who may be putting something off, will no longer do that. They will step out as you did in faith, trusting him, knowing that he is the provider, that he teaches us what we need to know, and that he walks with us and holds our hand every step of the way. And there's nothing that we should fear. All right, so this was a great discussion, ladies. Thank you, Sandra. We really appreciate your spending time with us today. And why don't you tell us a little bit about how our audience might be able to support you or provide donations?
Yes, please visit our website, which is www.heartsandhandsfoodpantry.com. Heartsandhandsfoodpantry.com, all one word, and is spelled out, A-N-D. And you can see our donation page. We have a list of the items that we need, products that we'd like you to donate as well. You can visit our Instagram page, our Facebook page as well. All the information is there on our website.
And don't forget about Amazon.
Oh yes, and our Amazon wish list. You can go there to Amazon and you can purchase items that we've selected. And there's also Amazon Smile, where you get a refund for what you've purchased for us as well.
Yeah. And I've used Amazon. It's really cool. They send it right next day. You get your stuff, right? Good. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like button, comment below, and of course, please subscribe by hit the bell so you will receive a notification whenever we post. So have a blessed week, everyone. And again, thank you, Sandra. We really enjoyed the conversation today.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Bye, everyone.